What's good with y'all? Let's go back and show it another video, man. You already know the fuck going on. Make sure I got my volume right before we get to this video. But anyways, this is the most painful punishment known to mankind. It's a 15-minute video, some educational shit, get your food ready, all that. Let's get straight to the video.
You said something wrong about the church in the Middle Ages, so the Inquisition is after you now. They've used a leather strap to secure a device that looks like a two-way fork with two sharp points on your neck. One of its sides is pushing against your sternum, and the other against your chin. At first, you tried to keep your head up to lessen the pain, but you couldn't stay like this for long. The so-called Heretic's Fork.
Bruh said, ugh. Woo. Is that what it is?
Was it deadly?
Bro, you gotta keep your head up like this at all times? But my neck gonna get tired as hell.
But made the victim suffer from the tiniest move. However, on the scale of pain based on scientific research, this kind of suffering gets only 27 points out of 140. In this video, you'll find out about the worst kind of torture in the history of humankind. So, viewer discretion is advised.
Y'all get ready.
You have at least a few times in your life been subjected to one of the less obvious kinds of torture. It's just that the executioner wasn't persistent enough when tickling you. In ancient China, this was the primary...
I would hate this punishment. Why? Because, nigga, I'm ticklish as hell. You touch me a little bit, I'm jumping. Hey, that's just what it is. I'm ticklish as fuck. I'm tall, but I'm ticklish. Don't tickle me, my nigga. You're gonna get all types of elbows. All types. I don't know what other types they got but besides this one, but you're gonna get all types of elbows, man.
Method of punishing delinquents from noble families.
That's the worst, bro. You can't do nothing about it.
Torture on the body, and the victim was able to recover quite fast if the procedure didn't go too far, of course. In European countries, goats were employed as a torture device. The culprit was tied up, and salty water was poured on their feet to make the animal lick them. What's so bad about that, you might ask? It's just that there's an incredible number of nerve endings in the feet, and the goat's rough tongue would irritate them quite a lot. So, after a few hours, the tickling starts inducing not just laughter, but also painful muscle contractions.
Brother.
You lose virtually all control over your body, which causes extreme stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. Moreover, the nerve endings responsible for reacting to tickles also signalize pain. It's just that if we're being tickled for fun, and for a short time, our reaction to stress doesn't go beyond...
Even for fun, bro, I don't want to be tickled. Even for fun, bro. Do not tickle me.
And light sensations in the body.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is base 44.
However, if done for hours, this causes the nervous system such overload that the lightest touch causes unbearable physical pain. Now imagine that it's not your feet being tickled, it's your private parts. In India, interrogation of criminals was accompanied by placing a small bug on the culprit's...
India, what's going on, bro? Y'all tickling private parts out here? India? What y'all doing?
And covering the insect with a walnut shell so that it didn't escape. The constant irritation of super sensitive areas caused by the bug's movements made the torture unbearable very quickly, and the executioners got any confession they wanted. Eventually, tickle torture would result in death by asphyxiation if the victim developed a throat spasm caused by uncontrollable laughter. Other possible outcomes were cardiac arrest or a brain aneurysm provoked by serious stress. Yet on the pain scale, tickle torture got only 32 points since the suffering it brought was mostly psychological.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be that high. This is very similar to the next
kind of torture, the Chinese water torture. At first, the person was immobilized, and then cold water would slowly drip onto their face or head.
What's so bad about that?
The constant skin irritation caused by the drops and splashes would make the nervous system hypersensitive. The inability to move and the wait for the next drop would literally start driving the person insane. Maybe you've even seen this torture in movies. Here's the paradox though. There's no proof that it was ever used in China. This kind of torture was first described by an Italian lawyer on the cusp of the 16th century. In the mid-18th century...
How do y'all niggas be coming up with shit like this, bro? Y'all just be bored or something? Y'all just be chilling like, damn, how should we torture these niggas? Like, when it comes to human, y'all definitely know how to torture humans, bro. I'll tell y'all that. God damn. Nigga, water drops on your forehead? Who came up with this shit? 1800s?
German and French doctors attempted to use this method to cure mental disorders. Moreover, the very term Chinese water torture came into active use owing to a trick by the legendary Harry Houdini. So, does the water drop torture actually work? Since it can look harmless at first glance, a few bloggers have dared to try it out themselves. The water drop torture was also tested by the Mythbusters. All participants knew they were actually perfectly safe and could be freed at any moment. Yet everyone went through a hellish experience. At first, the experimenters suffered from cold, thirst, psychological tension, and physical discomfort. Then, their entire bodies started aching, and breathing problems arose. It all ended in a panic and desperate pleas to be released.
That is the worst.
In addition, after this episode, the Mythbusters received an anonymous letter whose authors were...
That shit is that bad? I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I've never been in that situation.
Reportedly found out that the Chinese water torture may cause mental issues that persist for 20...
I feel like they more feel like they're tortured by the way they tied up, bro. Look how they tie these niggas up. If you didn't tie them up and you just had water just dropping on them, I don't think they'll be tripping as much. Like, bro, look how she tied up. Nigga, head to toe.
20 hours. So, on the pain scale, the water drop torture received 40 points.
40?
And a huge question as to whether it was
That's higher than this right here. Bro, this you look down and say goodbye. It's all with.
At least because it was replaced by much crueler kinds of water torture. One of them was the Swedish drink. This name was invented by the Germans. During the 30 Years' War, they became victims of the Swedish army servicemen, mercenaries, or marauders. This method of torture went as follows. Through a funnel, the perpetrators would pour buckets of the most disgusting liquids imaginable into the victim's throat.
Ugh.
They used everything from urine and filth to manure and feces. This was the Swedes' way of torturing the civilians to force them to give up their money or food. Not only did the victims feel disgust and humiliation from being subjected to the Swedish drink, they also contracted deadly diseases.
Hell yeah, you drinking urine and shit like that.
Pain.
Other shit.
The perpetrators would often use wooden planks to put pressure on the victim's bloated belly or hit it with sticks to deepen the suffering. So, on the pain scale, the Swedish drink got 46 points out of the possible 140. Very often, one kind of torture ranged from public humiliation, accompanied by intense discomfort, to a death punishment with unbearable suffering. One of such hellish inventions was the cane. It's a large board consisting of two halves with a hole between them, used to keep the device on a person's neck. The cane wasn't secured in any way, so the culprit had to support the board with their hands and balance it while walking. To intensify the punishment, the person in a cane could also be chained, stopping them from ever sitting down. Moreover, the cane's parameters would change according to the severity of the punishment. It could weigh anywhere from 9 to 15 kilograms and have a square, rectangular, or disproportionate...
You'd be surprised how much 9 kilograms, like that, bro. Especially doing it for like a long ass period of time, bro. 9 kilograms after 1 hour would feel like 25 kilograms, bro. Real shit.
An irregular shape. Sometimes they were even double or triple. Often a cane would be so large that the victim would be unable to touch their face to eat or drink. If they weren't helped by those who cared, the victim would die a slow death of hunger and thirst.
Imagine if you gotta scratch your face. You know those times you gotta scratch that face, man. You go for the, you can't. That would be the most annoying itch you'll ever have in your life. I don't know how y'all be coming up with this shit.
The cane was also used
Y'all niggas
as an
creative,
execution
bro.
device. The convict was
They don't even
placed
do this shit no more. They just throw your ass in jail.
inside a tall cage made specifically for this purpose. A cane would be secured above. Then, a prop would be taken from under the victim's feet, and they would
So you
slowly
just
be strangled
hanging.
with the board on their neck.
God
That's how people were executed in China
damn.
as recently as 1900, suffering excruciating pain. On the pain scale, cane torture
Hell
sits
yeah.
at 62 points. However, even this horror is far from being the worst thing people ever came up with. Europeans during the Middle Ages were especially creative in their acts of cruelty. It was then that they invented and actively used a contraption called the Judas Cradle. It's a spiky wooden or metal pyramid secured on a support with a special clamp over it. First, the victim's arms and legs were tied, and then their trunk was secured with a metal ring attached to the ceiling or the wall with ropes. After this, the person was slowly seated on the pyramid's sharp point. I won't go into horrific anatomical details, since it's clear anyway that the process caused unbearable pain. Moreover, such torture could go on for
Bro.
days. If the executioners wanted to receive a confession or other information, but the victim remained silent, they tied weights to their arms and legs, causing the pyramid edges to gnaw at the poor person's body even more. As if that wasn't enough,
Nigga,
the Judas
what?
Cradle was never cleaned, so it became the breeding ground for deadly bacteria.
You want the answers? You got it. You got all the answers. I'm not going through that shit, bro. Hell nah. Hell nah.
So, even if the victims managed to survive, they often died of infections. At any rate, they remained scarred physically and psychologically for the rest of their lives. That's why the Judas Cradle received 79
That shit
points
painful
on
as
the
fuck.
pain scale, crossing the midpoint. However, the first device to go beyond 100 in our list is the oubliette. It's a horizontal
Oubliette.
tunnel with the only
That
way
sound
out in the
French.
form of a grated opening above, used as a dungeon. Often, it was so narrow that the prisoners couldn't even sit down. Moreover, oubliettes were built right there in the castle so that the victims could hear human voices and smell the
Bro.
food, causing them even more.
Most of us wouldn't survive in the like the old days, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. Most of us wouldn't survive, bro. The way they was living, bro. Oof. Good. Man. I know right now everybody got guns, woo, this, that. You know. It's dangerous. Still dangerous. But, bro, back then, though? Nah, bro. Back then was even worse. Hell no.
Or psychological suffering. Yet, the real torture was the fact that the
Look at this
prisoners
shit.
were literally forgotten about in these holes, and they slowly died of thirst, hunger, exhaustion, and infections.
They
Compared
starving
to
you
this,
to
a
death.
Judas Cradle
Literally.
execution was a swift way to relieve one's suffering. The oubliette is a kind of immurement, which has been practiced since ancient times on all continents. In the Roman Empire, the most influential Vestals who had broken their virginity pledge were sentenced to death. It was against the law to shed their blood, though, so they were immured alive, fated for a slow,
That's the
desperate
worst.
death.
That's the worst.
If you
like,
think this insane practice remains
that's the worst way to die, bro. The worst way to die is like a slow death. Like you see yourself dying and you can't do nothing about it. That's the worst thing, bro. God damn, bro.
and in days past, you're wrong. In Mongolia, this barbaric
Look at this.
execution method was still in use until at least 1930.
Look at this.
So immurement in its different variations receives 108 points on the pain scale.
I wonder what's
But
the
what if you're not
highest.
alone in this closed space? Then it's an entirely different kind of punishment. Rat torture. As far back as in the 1st century AD,
Rat
the
torture?
cruelest emperor in the history of the Roman Empire, Nero, used rats to torture those who fell out of favor. They say he put the victim into a barrel with hungry rats who quickly
Whole bunch
ate
of
the person
6ix9ines.
alive. In India, they made criminals wear wide pants, which were first tied around the ankles and then filled with rodents.
Them rats show
Any
no fucking
ideas
mercy,
as to
bro.
which body parts suffered the most and how painful it was. However, medieval torturers took it even further. They tied the victims down to immobilize them, then placed a bottomless cage on their abdomens and filled it with rats. Then they put hot wood coal on the grates, and the rats became unbearably hot. First, they tried gnawing at the cage in desperate attempts to escape. Later, though, the rats realized they were standing on a soft human body and started eating their way out through it. Sometimes the cage was put on the victim's head, near the mouth, or other body parts. I'll let your imagination fill in the details.
Yeah, they eating the
most
fuck out of your
horrible thing
face.
is probably the fact that in South American countries, rat torture was in use until the 1980s. It received 112 points on the pain
Nigga,
scale.
hell
It would seem that
yeah.
there's nothing worse than this. But before we get to the most horrifying tortures that scored the
I'm not really a cupcake, but I am super baked. Mixed in with canned
Food is third-party tested, so you know it's safe.
and it ships legally and discreetly to your door, so you can say hi to your neighbors without being shipped.
maximum of 140 points. There are still 2 more devices. The first of which
No, I'm not getting YouTube red, my nigga. For what?
is the rack. This is another deadly invention of the Middle Ages. It looked like a wooden frame with rollers on both ends. The person's limbs were tied to them, and when the torturers would start turning the rollers, the victim's arms and legs would stretch in different directions. This caused unbearable pain due to joint displacement, muscle and ligament ruptures, and, in the most horrific cases, even bone fractures.
This is
The executioners
insane, bro.
could torture the victim like this for hours or even days to beat
They
them.
literally trying to pull your limbs out of your body, bro, while you still alive. That's crazy. Until they get all the answers they need to get from you. And if they ain't getting no answers, they're gonna pull you even more.
Confession or the necessary information out of them.
See, I just said
a
it.
specifically trained person would supervise the victim's condition to keep them conscious and alive before a specific time.
You saw a
So,
dude just
it's
pushing that
unsurprising that
motherfucker?
just threatening someone to send them to the rack would often be enough to obtain the necessary information. This horrible type of torture received 116 points on the pain scale. However, citizens of ancient Greece managed to outperform even the cruelty of medieval European torturers, being the creators of one of history's most
Yeah.
terrifying torture devices, the Brazen Bull. According to stories, it was built by an Athenian named Perilos as a commission for a Sicilian tyrant, Phalaris, in the 16th century BC.
Before we even get to that, like, I'm guessing they're gonna put somebody in there and they start cooking that motherfucker or something. I don't know, bro. Let's see.
There's a hollow copper statue of a bull with a hatch on its side. A person would be pushed inside. The hatch
Yeah, I knew it. I just said that. They putting somebody in there and they're gonna cook him. Slow roast. Bro, niggas are, bro. How do you come up with this? How do you come up with this?
would be shut, and then the torturers would start a fire under the bull's belly. Furthermore, the statue's nostril structure made the victim's scream sound like the bull's bellow. Yet this barbarism was apparently not enough. So after the execution, the victim's bones were used to make jewelry to then be sold on markets. The inventor of this hellish machine realized very quickly that doing business with tyrants was a bad idea, since the first person Phalaris tried out the brazen bull on was Perilos himself. First, the man's skin started burning in the places where it touched the metal. Then, the hot air gradually burned his airways and lungs. He
Bro,
went on to
that's
slowly
the
cook alive
worst
before choking to death or going.
Torture ever. Okay. Just go ahead and slice my head off. Don't put me in there, bro. If you're gonna put me in there, bro, just don't do it. And then that's
Like
like,
a
bro,
conch.
you dying slowly. That's the worst thing, bro.
Before this, though,
They got
Perilos
another
went
one?
through the agony
niggas
that
got a
reached
whole nother one.
130 points on the pain scale.
They got
Even
one
this
worse than
horror
this?
compared to the fate of those sentenced to lynching. It's definitely one of the most barbaric punishments in humanity's entire
it?
history. And it hails from Asia. It was used in China, Vietnam, and Korea right until the early 20th century to punish perpetrators of the most heinous crimes like mass murder and high treason, as well as to eradicate the emperor's personal enemies. It comes as no surprise since the victim would be tied to a pole in a crowded space to
And
turn
then
the
what?
execution into public humiliation. Then, a few torturers would slowly cut pieces of flesh out of the convict's arms, legs, and chest. We know from historical records that during Ling Chi, the
Bro,
victim would suffer from
These niggas slicing you like a piece of steak, bro? How y'all got the guts to do this, bro?
100
This is
to
crazy.
3,000 wounds. That's why this torture is also dubbed death by 1,000 cuts. Although the experts state that with such wounds, a person would most likely die within 20 minutes. Sometimes the families of the victims would bribe the executioners to inflict a deadly wound right away. This wouldn't remove the victim's physical pain, but it's worth remembering that for the Chinese, Ling Chi was also a spiritual punishment. According to their beliefs, this disfigurement of the body wouldn't allow the victim to be whole and healthy in the afterlife. This horrific execution method officially remained in use in China until 1905. This type of torture received the most points on the pain scale, 140.
That's fucking
I told
crazy
you all
as
this-
hell, bro. Oh boy. Bro, I'm telling y'all, bro. Y'all wouldn't survive back then, bro. I wouldn't either, nigga. That's some crazy ass shit. But anyways, if y'all enjoyed that video, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. If you're new, go follow me on TikTok, bro. Give me the 10,000 followers. Give me the 10K, bro. And I'm out.